People who work alone describe their creepiest experiences on the job. Few things freak people out as much as being alone, not necessarily in the relationship sense, but the actual deafening and eerie stillness of being isolated in a place where no one would know if something happened to you. When you get down to it, complete isolation sounds horrifying, but for people who work alone, it just becomes part of the process. Scary stories from people who work alone reveal just how lucky you are to work in an office full of co-workers. Sure, they can get annoying, but at least you're among other warm bodies. Much like people who work graveyard shifts, people who work alone tend to become spooked once they realize they might not be alone, but rather, in the company of an unknown party. Redditors who work alone shared their most terrifying stories from being on the job, frightful moments that don't in any way sound worth the paycheck. Number 1. Something set off the morgue freezer alarm from Redditor/u/didn'tstud. I worked as an assistant in a morgue. As a student, I got to open and study the bodies that people donated to the university. All the bodies were stored in a giant walk-in freezer. Also, the morgue had a motion sensor system inside the freezer, so if you get stuck inside, an alarm would activate and someone would come to help you. One time I was working alone because my teacher was doing some paperwork in his office that was in an adjacent building. I heard a lot of noise, but I thought it was my teacher in the other building or something like that. When suddenly the F-king alarm goes off, scaring the SHT out of me. In that moment I was like, SHT, the teacher is stuck inside the freezer. And when I was running to the freezer, my teacher grabbed my arm and told me I thought you were inside the freezer. In that moment we stayed there staring at the door until he stopped the alarm and opened the door. I was behind him with a F-king broom, waiting for the worst. When he opened the freezer we didn't find anything that could activate the motion sensor. There wasn't anybody, at least not alive. We decided that it was enough for the day and we left the morgue early. Number 2. A toy store worker freaked out when the local ghost responded to his wager from Redditor/u/Kinkuva. My dad worked at the Haunted Toys R Us in Sunnyvale, California. He worked as a night watchman back in the day to pay for school. Cool gig, got to sit around and study while being paid for doing next to nothing. Learned to juggle and play guitar too. Weird stuff happened there all the time. Objects would fall off shelves as you walked past them, lights flickered on and off from time to time, noises from the other side of the hall, stuff like that. So there he was in a big mostly dark store, all by himself, thinking about the ghost. He said aloud, "If there is a ghost here, then that balloon, the red one in the middle of the roof, will pop." Right as he finished the sentence, the balloon burst. Suffice to say he turned on all the lights in the building and got as close to a door as he could for the rest of the shift. Number 3. The ghost of a former patient haunted an adolescent rehab center from Redditor/u/we_coyote73. I worked overnights in an adolescent RTC for a short time. About a week into the job I was told about Amanda. Amanda was a resident from around 10 years prior who managed to hang herself in the shower. According to my co-workers, she would sometimes make appearances at night in the form of making a whimpering sound in the supplely room, or on very rare occasions she would actually appear in the corner of the hallway nearest her old room. I blew off the story, thinking they were just messing with the new guy, until one night, about 2 months later, I was doing rounds while my partner took a smoke break. I was checking the kids were asleep when I saw a girl sitting in the corner of the hallway with her arms around knees, which were pulled up to her chin. Something about her body language told me she was really sad. I started to approach her but heard a noise from behind me. I checked to find nothing awry, and when I looked back to the corner the girl was gone. When my co-worker returned from his smoke break I told him what I saw and he said, "Yep, that's Amanda." Number 4. A college student was freaked out by an isolated computer lab from Redditor/u/wes_is_best in. So my major has a computer lab that is 2 stories underground. I have spent countless hours using these computers, and I have spent nights down in what us students call the dungeon. One night, around 2 a.m., I went down the hall to go get some water. The lights use motion sensors. As I was filling my water bottle, the last light turned on at the end of the hall. So there was this dark gap between me and this last light way down the hall. I was mildly creeped out, but then I saw something move in the darkness between me and the light. I proceeded to note my way home promptly. Number 5. A movie theater night janitor felt like he was being watched from Redditor/u/Anastarov. I used to be a night janitor in a movie theater. We would go in at 4 a.m. and clean until the doors opened at 11 a.m. To save time and our jobs, We would sometimes come in around the time the last movies were finishing and just sleep in one of the empty theaters, making sure we would be there when the shift started. Our basic mo was to use electric leaf blowers up and down the aisles of each theater, blowing popcorn and trash all the way to the bottom, then cleaning the seats up manually for anything gross or larger debris. This was expedient, but it was very loud, so it was easy to lose yourself in the work. Of course, the lights were on in the theaters to better assist in the cleaning, and usually, we were the only ones there at the time, so whenever something strange happened we would chalk it up to the other guy. There was one standing rule though, that we all followed to the letter: no one in the projection booth. There was no reason to go up there, we didn't clean it, all our supplies were downstairs, and most of all, it was haunted. There is a phenomenon that happens with theaters and projection booths: no matter what, you always feel like you're being watched. When you're walking around deaf, from the sound of the blowers, in an empty movie theater, and you happen to glance up at the booth, and there is unmistakably someone standing there watching you, you will SHT your pants. Especially when you go out into the hallway and find the other guy in his theater working. Especially when you both go at either end of the building to the two exits of the booth, and trap whoever it was up there and there is no one there. We just chose not to FCK with it. Number 6. A real estate photographer found a horrifying scene from Reddit/u/life with ad. I don't work in extreme seclusion, but I can go days without seeing anyone. I do real estate photography, so I'm going in and out of strange houses all day, almost always vacant. I've had a ton of weird experiences and encounters with squatters, but the creepiest was a badly fire-damaged house I shot. The owner was a flipper and asked me to go get before photos. Before he hung up he mentioned the previous owner killed herself in the house during the fire. I got there and the house was severely burned and has no electricity, so the only light was my flashlight. I walked into the bathroom and immediately knew where and how this woman killed herself. Here are the photos of what I saw. Number 7. They saw a man wearing a scream mask at the back door from Redditor/u/phantom_61, worked overnight as a master control operator in my youth. One night, around 3 a.m., I catch sight of the camera we have aimed at the back door, and there's someone standing there wearing a scream mask staring at the camera and not moving. I go to the back door, which is magnetically sealed and deadbolted for overnight. The door is next to impossible to force open, and look out the peephole and there's no one there. Head back to control and see them walk back into frame, wave at the camera, and then walk away. Called the cops. They found nothing and the camera doesn't record, it's live feed only. Number 8. A missionary worker was scared as witch doctors passed by from Redditor/u/Sunset Dreams 1111. I was working in the villages of Malawi, Africa, and came to one community very isolated and remote. The children stopped going to school because these guys were terrorizing them. They were witch doctors and if caught they'd take the kids into the cemetery and do crazy things. They also terrorized the widows and others in the community. When they told me the story, I thought they might be exaggerating a bit. I didn't even feel scared when I was in the villages, and since they are cut off from technology, I thought maybe it was just a bit of folklore passed away to create fear. Then one day I was sitting on a banana fibers mat with a widow and drinking tea. I couldn't speak the tribal language, so we just smiled and drank together in silence and peace. All of a sudden I heard like this grunting sound. An electric bolt of fear crept down my body. I can't even explain how intense this fear was. It's like I just froze and couldn't even turn around. I just felt evil and darkness around me. Anyway, these witch doctors surrounded us for a while and just grunted and hissed and made these animal noises. We didn't move an inch. We never turned around. They were so close and literally right behind us, and all I could think the entire time was I'd feel a spear in my neck any second. After a while they left and eventually my transportation arrived. A few other Americans were in other villages and came for my pickup. I remember once I got in the car I couldn't even speak for a while what had happened. My words and stories don't do justice to what I felt that day. I never knew darkness like that existed, but it does. Number 9. A student in Alaska was nearly trapped in a snowstorm from Redditor/u/old grey sweater, worked as a lab student in Alert, Nunavut, look it up, most northerly inhabited place in the world. I was there for my second term in January, so total darkness. The lab I worked at was an atmospheric lab, so it was far from the main base, maybe 5 km. Around the lab, there were lifelines leading to all of our instruments outside. However, on this particular Wednesday, which was Flasking Day, it was a little stormy but nothing too serious. Since I was the student, I did all of the outside flasking. I loaded up a sleigh with evacuated flasks and would walk about 300 meters from the lab, open up the flasks, and then walk back to the lab. We then would send them south for analysis. Since we had to ensure that we got the best samples, we always had to walk into the wind. That means no lifeline. It was coming from a different direction every time. On this Wednesday I had my little headlamp, walked out, and pulled my sleigh into the darkness, the darkest dark. I was a couple hundred meters out and everything went dark. I turned around, the lab was gone, the station was gone, where we parked our truck was gone. I was alone, with only a headlamp and a sleigh of empty glass flasks. I panicked. I had no radio, no phone, not that they work up there anyway, and no clue where anything was. The wind was strong enough that I couldn't even find my tracks. I accept my fate and just stay put, heart racing. This was it. This was how I die. After the longest 2 minutes of my life, the power comes back on. Number 10. A nature photographer possibly heard a murder from Redditor/u/USMC_missile man. I was photographing a waterfall in a deep basin. I was the only one in the basin. I was alone from 6 p.m., 10:30 p.m. The trail that comes in was right up against a rock face that went straight up and over 400 feet high. When I was heading back up, there were bare wet human footprints up the stones of the trail. I got to a spot where I see muddy footprints leading into the brush. A few moments later I heard a blood-curdling scream from the same bushes. The sound to me sounded like a mountain lion. They are common in the area. I ran faster than I've ever run before. I called rangers to my mile marker and I've checked back since then. No missing persons reports have been filed, nor was anyone's car in that area that night. Easily one of the scariest experiences I've had. Number 11. An overnight worker heard disembodied singing from Redditor/u/banana bugs. Worked overnights at 2 different 24-hour residential treatment centers for teens. AKA, poltergeist soup. We, staff and clients, would see and hear things, people during the middle of the night, almost every night. I remember when I worked at a drug and alcohol rehab facility, it used to be a nun area attached to a church. I used to hear women singing through our speaker that communicated with our doorbell for visiting hours. I could see through the window of the door from where I would be sitting, and there was never anything there. I have a bunch more. Those places were full of weird SHT. Number 12. They found out later the car dealership was actually haunted from Redditor/u/spicy crypto guy. This happened a few years ago when I was working at a car dealership. Our business had just moved into a new lot down the road and the cars were parked in an open-air parking garage. One way in and one way out with one set of stairs which was right by the entrance. So I'm hanging out at the entrance and I hear a car door slam. I found it strange since no cars had driven in and no one had gone up the stairs. So I start walking up the stairs and I hear another door slam shut. I'm thinking WTF is happening? Next day I tell my co-workers what happened and they all think I'm just delusional. Fast forward a week later, I had to travel down the road to another dealership to pick up some parts. The dealership I went to had just moved out from where my company had moved in. I walked down to the parts department and grabbed my part. As I'm walking away, the guy behind the counter asks if I've worked the night shift yet at our new place. I told him I had and he quickly responded with "Be safe, that place is haunted." I immediately got goosebumps and proceeded to tell him what I had experienced just a week prior. He said it was normal and you get used to it. Freaked me the FCK out. Number 13. A morbid MP3 selection arrived on this worker's iPod from Redditor/u/Cloverleaf66. Worked alone evenings cleaning in a building by myself. Had been there about 3 years by this time. I had on my headphones in the elevator and the song I was listening to abruptly stopped partway through, then Stairway to Heaven started to play. I didn't even have Stairway to Heaven on my MP3 player. It had never been on my MP3 player. Number 14. An Antarctic worker ran afoul of some locals from Redditor/u/Lord. I was working in Antarctica at a station with an elephant seal mating ground. I thought I had left something in a shipping container by the docks, next to the elephant seals. Mindful of my safety and being a bit lazy, I grabbed a utility vehicle, and drove down there at midnight. I parked and left the vehicle running with the lights on. As soon as I got out I realized it was seriously dark. No moon, no building lights, can't see your hand in front of your face dark. I hear heavy breathing coming from all around me, and I can hear the 2-ton beastards starting to move. Whatever I forgot waited until the next day. Number 15. An office worker locked themselves in when an intruder appeared from Reddit/u/sleepy time Maggie. I work in a building that is high security because we have a lot of expensive equipment. If you want to get to my office you have to walk through 4 doors that require keycard access. It's very quiet and sterile. White walls, nobody around, very little furniture, grey floors, open ceiling so you can see the ducts. Sounds echo here. I was working alone and noticed that there was a guy in the building. He was wearing the same shirt that maintenance wears, but it was weird because it was really late at night on a Saturday. He was also wearing jeans, and the maintenance people always wear black pants. He kind of gave me the creeps, so I closed my office door and stayed there. I could hear the echo of him walking back and forth for a while. He tried the handle on my office door twice. I heard the beep of him try to open my office door with the key card twice. It turns out that he didn't work there. He is the grown son of one of the workers and was walking around the building trying to steal stuff, but his dad's key card won't open any offices because it's a handyman card with limited access. Handymen have to make appointments and you have to let them in, unlike cleaning people or the techs maintaining the servers who can open any door. He got caught on camera and security checked to see whose card had tried to open the doors. The guy got a fine for trespassing and his dad got fired. Number 16. A former madhouse was invaded by late-night trespassers from Reddit/u/Warumble. I have a workspace in an old former madhouse, built by monks, which had been turned into a hospital for SS personnel and lots of spooky history. A huge building with long hallways and a stern 1920s architecture. Brick archways, ugly sculptures of long-gone monks. I usually work late, until 3 in the morning, and I am usually the last person to leave the building. One night in winter, I locked my room and went to the exit. All the lights were off and the wind was howling. Suddenly I heard the sound of running footsteps in the distance. Lots of running footsteps. Then it was quiet again. I went down some stairs, and there I saw little red lights blinking on the other side of a long dark hallway, just for a moment. Then they were gone. I was pretty freaked out at this point. I walked faster in the direction of the exit. Then I heard those running footsteps again. I turned a corner and suddenly a bunch of kids was screaming in my face. Almost had a heart attack. Turned out the kids were playing laser tag. They borrowed the keys to the building from one of their parents. They had these laser guns with red lights to shoot each other with and were chasing each other through the dark building. They thought the building was deserted and almost SHT themselves when this big guy in a trench coat suddenly appeared in front of them. Number 17. A rogue pager went off repeatedly despite being unplugged from Reddit/u/NUHR. I work nights in a large warehouse-like store. It's just me and 2 others in the store at any given time. We used to have buttons all over the store that would page for help for our customers. I've been working at this location for 5 years and the supervisor for 3 of those years. Once a year we will have one go off, and these things are not plugged in at all. The owners removed from the system in my first 3 weeks. They still go off sometimes. Number 18. A janitor learned he had a guest from Reddit/u/Staple@Army. I used to work as a night janitor at a student union. Skirting tables for events was part of the gig. I was scanning my floor for what needed to be done that night and went into a room annex. Long thin room with one wall entirely made of glass facing the river. I approach a skirted table that's against the glass wall and hear snoring. Sounds funny though. I think it's on my radio. Assume someone fell asleep at work and rolled on the talk button. Standing there for a few seconds trying to figure it out, I realize there's a homeless man sleeping under the table. His snoring was climbing the glass window and bouncing off the ceiling. That's why I couldn't figure out where the sound was coming from. If you've ever thought you were completely alone only to find out you're within arm's distance from another person, your body becomes one big goosebump and your butthole puckers tighter than a dolphin's. It was freaky. Number 19. Security heard violent screaming late at night from Reddit/u/Tenebrae. I used to work overnight as a dispatcher, system monitoring. Most days we had 2 people per shift. Pretty much the only reason we wouldn't would be if someone was sick or something. Most nights were completely uneventful and I basically did nothing for 8 hours. One night around 1 a.m. I hear screaming like some girl is getting murdered. My coworker and I both start checking cameras, nothing. I grab my radio and start running through the building to find this girl. I run down to the first floor before I realize it's coming for the back parking lot. I exit the building expecting to have to fight someone with a knife or see a rape or some SHT. What I actually find is a girl alone in her car just screaming and crying. I find out she just wanted to vent and was seriously okay. She thought no one would be in the office park at 1 a.m. I promptly tell her to knock it off as it was absolutely terrifyingly and to please leave. So not really that scary / creepy / strange at the end of it all, but it was absolutely the worst 2 minutes of my life as I was trying to find the screaming. Number 20. A greenhouse worker was spooked after hours of listening to true crime podcasts from Redditor/u/maker. To start off, I love listening to true crime podcasts. This summer I worked, by myself, in a greenhouse at my university that was on the top, 9th, floor of this building. To even get into the building, you need card access, but to use the elevator you need card access and a key. Over the summer, almost 0 people were ever on campus, and especially not of this floor or even in the building for that matter. After probably 6 hours of working alone on the top floor of this building and listening to creepy murder stories, I was pushing my car to the elevator, a massive industrial freight elevator, that no one else uses, and I scanned my card and waited for the elevator to reach my floor. I could hear it coming, and it was taking a while, so I was still listening to this podcast about some serial killer. Once it was finally on the 9th floor, I got ready to open the outer door and happened to peer into the little window and see something inside staring at me through the window. I screamed and jumped back probably 2 feet before I realized it was just another research student coming up to use the greenhouse. Being alone for 6 hours and only hearing scary stories of people getting killed really messes with your nerves. Number 21. A late night professional heard sounds coming from upstairs from Redditor/u/LaJack37. I've been working in my trade for about 20 years. It can be difficult to focus when all the young bucks are asking you questions and blaring terrible music, so I tend to start work when everyone else leaves for the night. I started hearing sounds upstairs like people talking / walking / opening doors. I dismissed it as my imagination for a few days, but it got to be too much to ignore, so I started investigating when I would hear things. Never found anything. Thought I was going crazy though. Turns out, one of the guys that lived near the shop made a hide-y-hole nest up in the attic to hide from his girlfriend like some kinda dumb SS Phantom of the Opera. Vote in comments what number you like best. Also please give me a thumbs up on the video if you like it, and thank you for watching Dreamland Orchard. If you have any true stories or any suggestions for stories, email me at dreamlandorchard@gmail.com.